Green screen, yeah, I would love it. You know, a green screen would be amazing. I feel like we're missing people. Are we missing people? Should I wait? Or should I just start? What? Okay, the name of this class, which l'chayra is going to become a series of classes, that's my guess. Alright, so the name of this is article. Actually, I was going to make a PowerPoint, but then I realized that there's no point because most of this is text, and when it's text, it's like, oh my goodness, you're going to read that much on the thing. So I named it Right Way, W-R-I-T-E, W-A-Y, Right Way. That's a play on words. Hope you guys realize. So we'll call this class Right Way, W-R-I-T-E, W-A-Y. So article writing presentation. So let's talk about it. Number one, let's start. Let's just jump right in. Why is article writing important to Rabbanis? I mean, obviously, if Rabbi Klein thought that this is a good idea, we discussed what would be topics of classes, for the next few times, and I threw out a few ideas, and he really loved this idea. He loved this idea. So, what does the Olam think? Why is article writing an important nakuda, an important skill, an important tool?
Articles or letters? Or both?
Writing. Writing.
When there's an issue that comes up, it doesn't warrant writing a full book, so you can write an article addressing it.
Okay, when there's an issue that comes up that does not warrant a full book, you could write an article addressing it, even if it's a 70-page article. Anybody else?
You might have to write to people in charge that don't know a lot about this topic, explaining to them why this thing is important.
So you might need to write to people that are in charge of different things, explaining certain topics, whatever topic. Okay? Anybody else? To the mayor. If you want to write to a non-Jewish mayor or something that's negate to your kehillah, to your maisad, whatever. Yeah?
Organize your thoughts, as opposed to like when you're speaking, you're just like saying whatever comes to you. You're not going to say, remember what you're saying, they can read it over again.
Rabbi said we should listen to everybody. This is a very important part of this process of learning about writing, to listen to each other's ideas. So please, again.
That's it, to organize your thoughts.
Yeah, to organize your thoughts.
As opposed to a speech where you're going to be like free, as you're going.
Yeah, there you go. Look, I organize my thoughts. I put them into writing. Yeah, very good. Fine. Organize your thoughts.
And the people that are reading it could, like, if they miss a point, they can go back to it. Some people read fast, some people read slow. Some people listen.
Oh, so now we stopped on at least one of the points that I have down here, which is that a written piece enables people to absorb information differently. It has a certain milah, it has a certain benefit that the spoken word does not have. And that is, what did you just say?
Well, there's a few of them, but one of them is that they could...
The last one you just said.
Read at their own pace.
They can read at their own pace. They can take it as it comes. Read a little bit, take time to think about it. Mashenkin, when someone is standing up there and speaking, so you either caught what he said, or you missed it. It's too late. You could try to ask him to do Chazar Sashir. By the way, Official Schachter said over a great joke. I don't know if it actually happened. There was a guy that went over to the rabbi of his shul after davening on Shabbos one day, and he said, Rabbi, I run a radio show, and I wanted to know, can you give that sermon in 5 minutes? And he says, yeah, for sure I could. So why didn't you? Okay, so I guess you get to organize thoughts. You get to enable people to process information at their own pace. Anybody else?
I'm trying to understand. You say article, you mean like an article that's like in a newspaper or like
an article in a journal, an email that goes out to a group, an article into a magazine, correspondence, all the above.
Is there like a practical writing, like a
Yes. This is not an English class. This is not. Look, it's definitely not. I'm not giving a shir. I don't think you have to make birchas Torah on what I'm conveying over here. But yes, this would be similar to something that some people would teach in university, I suppose. Yes, but you cannot blame me for that because it was Rabbi Klein who was like really excited about this topic. I understand that he wants the Olam to have practical tools that could be useful for Rabbanos. I'm under the impression that this is a rabbinical training seminar. Is that correct?
leadership training seminar.
Okay, leadership, great. So article writing. So that's what we're talking about right now. Why is article writing, whether it's in a journal, whether it's an email to a group, whether it's a post, whether it's in a magazine or a newspaper, why might this be important? So we heard a few ideas already that there might be occasions where just the spoken word is not negaya. It's just practically not feasible, right? Or we heard that you are able to organize your thoughts. You're able to afford people the opportunity to process information in a way that they otherwise wouldn't be able to process with the spoken word. Anybody else? Yeah?
You could reach a much larger crowd.
You can you can expand your reach. Ah, that's beautiful. Now, I'm not sure how much that would be neged directly to your rabbanis and your kehillah, but maybe it would even be, because maybe you have some people, they don't come to shul as much as you would like them to. They don't come to shiurim as much as you would like them to. But if you have what that you can write and you can send it out. So, it's funny. On the way here, I got a phone call from a chaver of mine. He's a huge Talmud Chacham. His name is Rabbi Chaim Rosen. And he, over the past year or so, has been sending out emails where he writes a shtickle from our Rebbe, Rav Torsky Hashem Yikam Damai, and then he gives Mar Mekaymas and Harchavais and his own, Chidushim, etc. And I told him, I said, Reb Chaim, I really think it'll be much more L'Tayal Sa'inin if you do it once a month instead of like 2 or 3 times a week. Because people get overloaded, they don't look at it. But he told me, and I did not know this, he said he said that he has on his list people that Kechol Hanireh, this is an ikr part of their learning. His people who tell him that, it's mamish keeping me going through my week and this. So there you go, right there, you're expanding your reach. You're not able to reach them necessarily the same way. Okay, weiter. Anybody else? Son of the rabbi, come on, help us out. Oh, you're both sons of rabbis? Your brothers?
No.
You're both sons of rabbis. Anybody else? What might article writing enable you to do that you might not necessarily be able to do with your spoken word? So one of them that I think is a big one is similar to what you were saying, but a little bit different. And that is the spoken word and the written word are very different. The way you speak is not the way you write. Loi roi dibur keroi ksiva. I'm sorry, I'm making it tired, Dick. I hope it's okay. But this they wouldn't do in university. But loi roi ksiva keroi dibur. You can't make a mematzinu between them. And it's not, the ma'atzad is a pirch on the ma'atzad. You could get a ma'atzad over here. But the vart is like this. Generally speaking, when you talk to people, or you give a class orally, you speak in a certain way. And then when you write, it could be a different way. Now sometimes, it could be much more informal. Any of you guys read Nachman Seltzer?
I know.
Okay, you notice that sometimes he'll speak in half sentences, like he'll totally break the rules of grammar. Sometimes in the written word, it's only become a thing, as far as I've noticed at least, in like the past 10-ish years. It used to be there were very clear rules about how you write, and you don't dare break those rules. You break those rules, that's it, you're out. Like, I don't know if 20 years ago our school would have gone for Nachman Seltzer's type of stuff.
Right the way you spelled it.
Sorry?
You spelled it right the way you spelled it. They're gonna throw it down.
Well, that's kind of like a pun. That's a play on words.
Is it W-R-I-T or R-I-T?
W-R-I-T-E, not R-I-G-H-T. So that was referring to the name of this course that I'm calling Right Way, W-R-I-T-E-W-A-Y, which is already throwing in there an allusion to some of the skills that we could possibly use in this arena. So nowadays, this mamish goes, and it can be very powerful. You can write in a super informal way. For example, he walked out of the store. Period. Next sentence is one word, shock. Period. You don't talk like that, and you don't really bad some don't write like that. But nowadays it can go. It can go, but you don't talk like that. And also you could speak, and generally speaking, you usually in the written word, it's much more formal. Now, if you would try to speak like that, that wouldn't go over so well. But in the written word that people are reading, you can. So what it's doing basically is that it's expanding your range of expression. Now, why is it important? Well, because it's like. Anybody here speak a little bit of Yiddish? Okay, anybody here speak a little bit of Hebrew? Anybody here speak a little bit of English?
A little.
So, have you ever noticed that sometimes you're looking for a way to say it and you can't find the exact sprach in English, but you can find the sprach in Yiddish? Right? Or sometimes, that was on purpose.
I forgot the right way to pun, of course.
The truth is that you could say sprach in English as well. But sometimes that Hebrew expression gets it just the right way. How would you say that in English? Now, sometimes you don't remember how to say it in English because you've been here for 20 years. There was a Yid who said, tell me if I'm wrong, that after 20 years of living in this country, you don't become bilingual, you become chatzi-lingual. It's like my daughter said to my wife the other day, Mommy, do you want me to limchok it? Right? Or one of the Rebbeim in Teres Moshe, when I ate by him one Leil Shabbos, so he says to me that one time his daughter came over to him and said, Tati, ani foldeti et laundry. That can happen. Where you just lose your ability in both languages. Which, by the way, I try to tell my children, I try to do this myself. When you're speaking Hebrew, speak Hebrew. When you're speaking English, speak English. Okay, we're yeshivish, so we mix everything together, but it is kedai, especially... It is kedai. It is exceedingly worthwhile. By the way, I gave a class here in Ohr Somayach this past Thursday at noon. And it was guys that were like super wet behind the ears. I mean, this is like what Ohr Somayach really is supposed to be about, right? Not you guys. and Rabbi Klein was like, now remember, no Hebrew words. These guys don't know anything or something like that. I said, don't worry, I grew up in a family of Bali Tshuva, like all of my extended relatives, they don't know kimat any verter in Hebrew or in Yiddish. When I got there, one of the guys in Flatbush, I'm from Potomac, Maryland. I don't know if you guys know where that is. Like, as you hope it's as well as it can get. So, one of my roommates, he said something in Yiddish, and I was like, what? And he says, Yoshua, you seriously do not know a word of Yiddish. I said, that's correct, guilty as charged. Al Kopanim, if you want to maintain your language skills, it is worthwhile to try to stick to whatever language you're using. Within a context like this, I wouldn't say that's necessarily true. But, if you're within a context that it makes more sense, so then, yeah. Okay, so that's one thing. You expand your range of expression. You expand your range of expression.
Speak in a harsher tone than you could write in a harsher than you speak.
Oh, you can write harsher than you would speak. We're going to get to that, but yeah. Now, first of all, the truth is that I skipped something. And this, I think, is really the Evan HaYesod of this whole class or series of classes, however it shall evolve. And that is that the written word plays a huge role, particularly within our frum society. We have Svarim, right? We have Svarim. We have magazines. We've got newspapers. We've got kol kaires, michtavim. So, bichlal, within frum society, the written word plays a huge role. And I don't know about you guys, but if I see a letter, even when it comes from the top, and it's written well, to me at least, it has a different, and I suspect that this is, a kind of universal phenomenon, that it has more of an impact in a good way than if the letter looks like a mess. And I wouldn't blame those at the top. I mean, usually they're not the ones. I know this. Okay, I've got lots of letters from big rabbanim, and I think there were only maybe 2 of them that actually wrote it themselves. Usually the way it works is that you want a rav to sign on something, you draft a letter, at least from my experience. This is my experience. You draft a letter, you bring it to him, he'll edit it as he sees fit, and then it goes. So I'm not saying it comes from them. I'm saying it comes from whoever drafted it. Lahavdil. If the president gives a great speech, it's not because the president wrote a great speech. I mean the United States. Or the prime minister. It's because his speechwriter wrote a great speech.
Who's Jewish?
What?
Probably Jewish.
Who probably is Jewish. There you go. So the written word plays a huge role. Okay, so what's your name? Remind me?
Bumi.
Again?
Bumi.
You said that it gives the reader the opportunity to absorb information in a different way. Now, one of the nekudas, what's your name? Yehuda. What you're stelling on is, let's just speak out what's the yesod. The yesod is that when you're, let's ask a question. You said you could write in a harsher way.
Why? Because
Oh.
they guys personally. Right?
Oh, because when you're standing in front of people and you start yelling at them, how could you all do this and this and this? It's like, whoa, Rabbi, chill out. All right? Or we're going to walk out. As opposed to when you're reading something, it's less person to person. It's less confrontational. People just kind of, it's like my uncle once said to me, when you send an email, so people just get it and they read it. There's also the nekuda that when someone is speaking, the tendency is that sometimes people kind of zone out, or they'll schmooze with the guy next to them in the middle, or whatever it may be. Mashenkin, when you're reading, you tend to just read the whole thing. Okay, here's another nekuda. People tend to be able to read much faster. Like if I would have written up this whole class and give it to you guys to read, assuming that you'd have the patience to read it, you'd be able to get through all the material much quicker than if you're listening to me give it over orally. Now, obviously, the reason why we're doing this, there is a reason why we're doing it. And of course, we're not coming to say here that just forget about, speaking or giving shiurim or drushes, etc., and, just write everything. No. But there is a makom for being able to give over a lot more information within a lot less amount of time. Okay, and you mentioned about structure and organizing your words. So I would just add to that, that when you write something, you have the opportunity to revise what you've written before you click on the publish button or the send button.
Seconds to undo what you sent.
Right. Well, theoretically, you should be reviewing it, and if necessary, revising it.
can be done by speech also.
Well, that's
Once you
true
say, you've said it.
before you get up there and start talking. Once you've gotten up there,
So it's always before you get, if you know what you're saying before you start talking.
I think the difference is that when you're speaking, you don't have nearly as much control over the words coming out of your mouth as your brain is moving, because right now I'm taking in a huge amount of information. Some of it is conscious, some of it is subconscious. Like right now I just noticed, I feel this against me. Right? I feel this again. That's information that I'm taking in. So I could take off my jacket. I don't have to look at. I'm okay. So we got about 15 people in here. You're all looking at me, which thank you. I appreciate the fact that you're looking at me. But there's a certain like, okay, I'm intimidated. I've got to put on a good show over here, right? I've got to speak well. I've got to look good. So all this is going on, and it's getting a little bit warm. I wish there was maybe a little bit more lift coming in, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I'm not shaking when you're, today when I was working on this, so I needed a break. I went out to my yard and I shot a few hoops. So I, took a break in the middle, went back to it and, started working on it more. So I think that ability to revise and review before you hit the send button is definitely much stronger in the written word than in the spoken word.
See how it looks before it comes out.
Yes. Now, that being said, I would like to make the following point. I heard this from one of the rabbanim in Silver Spring when I was still in high school there. Baruch Hashem, I was zeicha for my last 2 years to be in the base medrash there during the morning hours of the day. And one of the rabbanim there said, I don't remember who he said this b'shem, that the Birchas Shmuel, Rav Baruch Ber Leibovitz, I remember as a youngster, trying to learn a shtickle in Birchas Shmuel and being like, what? Please, come on, have Rachmanis. And he said to me that they say that when Rav Baruch Ber said a shir, it came out azoy glat. It was mamish like a hot knife cutting through butter. It was so glat, so klar. And for some reason, when he went to write, it just didn't go the same way. Now, I was by Rav Yitzchak Berkowitz for a very short kufa.
It was the opposite, right?
What's that?
Chaim Brisker, the Chiddush of Chaim is very clear, and when he was given a shir, it was very hard to understand.
That's not what I read about him. But I'll take your word on it.
They say there's a sefer there, a better road, but shame the sheer thing, nobody can understand it.
Okay, in any event, be that as it may be, when I was by Rav Yitzchak Berkowitz for a very short kufa, so one of the shiurim that I was able to hear from him was the development, if you will, of the Mishnah. And he brought from the Goinim, I don't remember which one of the Goinim, it was like a sefer that, what? I don't remember if it was Shir Gun, could be. I don't know, could be. I don't want to give it a name since I don't remember the name. Al Kapanim, the question was asked, why is it that Stam Mishnah Libid Rabbi Meir? Which means that Rabbi Yehuda Nasi took Mishnah's Rabbi Meir and he used that as the Iker basis. That is going to be the meat and potatoes of the Mishnah of the Teresh Baal Peh from now and forever. Why is that?
So concise and clear.
There you go. Says the Goinim, because Mane Loshoin Me Hashem, and Rabbi Meir was given a gift of a Clarkite, and therefore Rabbi Yehuda Nasi took from him. So what do you see? Some people have it, and some people don't. L'mashal, Rav Elyashiv Zatzal, Rav Chaim Kanievsky, I don't think they ever publicly spoke. They always had someone speaking on their behalf. Now, obviously, they could do that. But the point that I'm driving at is that if a person doesn't have writing skill, and he feels like, this does not work for me, okay, say that. You don't have to use a skill that you don't have. Now, if you are a pulpit rabbi, I would think that if you don't have speaking skills, you better get them. Because it's really hard for me to imagine that a pulpit rabbi can have any significant measure of success without proper speaking skills. But writing skills, I don't think it's li'ikuva. However, that being said, I do think that skill development, like my uncle that I mentioned before, when he was a youngster, he was not athletic at all. As a matter of fact, he has a grandson, my cousin's son. So her older boy is very athletic by nature, and her younger boy is just like his grandfather, very unathletic by nature. But he pushes himself very hard. So my uncle, who's a wealthy person, he made a deal with this grandson of his. He wanted him to learn how to swim. So he has a swimming pool in his house. And he told him, he said, when you'll be able to swim from one end of the pool to the other without stopping, I'm going to bring you and your whole family on a what's it called when they go on a yacht?
Cruise?
On a cruise. That's a pretty wild prize. And he told me that he realized afterwards that he really overdid it. And he said, the kid wound up being able to do it at quite a young age, relatively speaking, for someone with those natural lack of abilities. And it looked really kind of ugly when he first did it, but he did it. But he managed to do it. So you can develop a skill even if you don't really have it that well. So it's not li'ikuva, but it is definitely a very useful, worthwhile tool to have in your tool chest. And if you can, I would think that it is definitely worth the time to develop the skill. Now, this is like a little bit derech agav, a little bit not derech agav. I'll get to you in just a second. Part of this is learning how to type blind. How many people in this room know how to type blind?
Hebrew.
Only Hebrew?
Yeah.
Only Hebrew.
I'm learning English now, but mostly only.
So I never knew how to type blind, but typing in English, like it was like chatzi blind kaze. So just at one point I decided I was like, that's it. I'm not looking at the keys. Now I don't know all the different functions, but basic typing blind, Baruch Hashem, I can do. Now then I decided I've got to be able to do this in Hebrew. That was Gehenim. That was 2 weeks of Gehenim. It was, oh no, I missed. Where's the back button? There. Well, the back button I knew. Bum. Oh no, I missed again. Back. Oh no. It was 2 weeks of Gehenim. It was awful. But Baruch Hashem, after 2 weeks, I got it. Now, I'm not one of the better typers in the world, but I can type. Baruch Hashem, I can type. And it's very, very useful to me. Now, that being said, again, I'm trying to give both sides. My Rebbe, Rav Aaron Lopiansky Shlita, who has published a lot of books and a lot of articles, I only found this out very recently. He does not know what? Sorry? He does not know how to type. He does not know. I couldn't imagine that in the year Tov Shin Pei, wherever we were then, Beis or Aleph it was, that there could be someone who's publishing that many books, that many Sfarim, writing that many articles, and is not typing them. And I said, it was a stupid question. So I said, how does Rebbe write them? He says, longhand. He writes out everything with a pen and paper, and then he has someone else type it up for him. So it's not li'ikuva. It's not li'ikuva. But again, is it a worthwhile skill to learn? And what's the oldest age here amongst this group? Who's the oldest here?
38.
38?
What?
38?
Sorry.
And then it drops down to 30, 22.
Which are all the characters here? So you're basically the rabbi's age.
You don't have to call me rabbi when I'm teaching you this. This is not a Sir Torah. Al Kol Panim, look, we're all relatively young. Okay, some of us are younger than others, but we're not like old dogs that can't be taught new tricks. So it's definitely a skill worthwhile gaining. By the way, they taina that when you learn new skills, like it sharpens your brain, it's good for your brain, it's good for your health. So anyway, it's all good. There was a question somewhere. Someone had a question over there. Again, remind me your name. I'm sorry. It's like, what? But remembering names is a wonderful tool to have as a rabbi or as someone involved. And it's so horrible at it. Ellie, yeah, what's up, Ellie?
Yeah, we talked about how by the written word you can revise and you have more control of than deeper through your mouth. It also comes with a danger because once you print it, it's out there.
Oh.
And it could.
This book, by the way, I'm getting really close. I'm getting very close with this book. We're mamish getting close with Tatzileni Pegara. That, Eli, the Nakuda that you just said, one of the Yidden that gave me an article for the book Tatzileni is a Yid by the name of Aryeh Levi. He runs a place called Maneh, which was set up in Beit Shemesh primarily to deal with abuse cases of children, to give them therapy and this and everything, etc. And I was going back, like so many people, I was going back and forth with him. When are you going to write me the article? Finally, I said, all right, Rabbi, we got to meet. So I sit down with him and I said, Rabbi, what's going on? Because over here already we're friends. Like I worked with him for a while. I was in Maneh for 6 months. Like here I can mamish talk to him like a friend. There are other people that, whatever. So he said, Yoshua, I'll tell you the truth. Every time I sit down to write, I'm breaking my teeth to try to figure out what am I going to write that will not get me in trouble. He said, one wrong word that I write, I'm finished. Not I'm finished, but if you'll have the kanayim in such and such neighborhood that will catch me on that and say, look what this oisvarf, look what this terrible person wrote, this is mamish anti-Torah, then he said, I'm not worried about myself. Now all the children from that neighborhood will not get the help that they need. So I offered him the following. I said, all right, you know what, Rabbi, here's what we're going to do. This is mamish b'maimar muskar. It's just to be machadi the nakuda that you're saying. I said, I'm going to interview you. I'm going to ask you questions. You're going to give me answers. I'm going to write them up. That way, if anybody comes with a taina to you, you could say, he didn't understand me properly. He wrote it. So he was masking. So you're right. It does come with a danger. You're right. The written word is much more difficult to say, oh, I didn't mean that. Oh, really, you didn't mean that. But the truth is that nowadays, the spoken word also came out. If you become someone who's an important person, everywhere you go, you're being recorded. Everywhere you go, you're being recorded. Just the other day, someone told me that he was by one of the rabbanim in Beit Shemesh, and he asked them a certain question. I forgot what it was, chaval. And the answer that he gave, and I said, that answer that he gave, you could understand in one of two ways. And probably because he's worried that maybe he's being recorded. So yeah, it's true. But the truth is, I think nowadays you have to be careful just as much with what you say. Go ahead. Yeah, I'm sorry, what's your name? Yisrael, please.
I just want to make a point that I one time we heard a speech was on Shabbos. He said, I'd only give us on Shabbos.
Yeah. Unfortunately, nowadays, even that might wind up being recorded.
Wait, the last two classes also were just not recorded.
Again?
The last two classes you gave also were not recorded.
Well, they're recorded. Just, I haven't done anything with them yet. Right. Yeah, that's also possible. All right, so let's talk a little tachlis. Okay, so here's just a couple of ha'aros that I had before we get into the more, meat and potatoes of learning the how. Okay, this is more like talking about the background. So as far as I can tell, and I'm not a bucky, as far as I can tell, here in Eretz Yisrael, rabbanim, it doesn't seem to be such a thing that rabbanim are involved in writing articles so much as part of their rabbanos. I would imagine, although I don't know, I would imagine that in America maybe it's probably more of a thing. Am I right? Yeah, okay, you hear that from your father? What about from your Yehuda? You also hear that from your father?
When you say the word articles, I'm thinking in New York Times, front page.
No, I mean mishpacha, hamodia, ami, whatever,
I think the most conventional way is actually emails.
Emails to the
emails to the kehillah. I think that probably amongst, in the English language community, probably it's more of a thing.
They have a whole bi-monthly journal. It's called Ohr. So they ask different rabbanim throughout the country.
Okay. Where? Here?
I think it's Shabbos.
Yeah, but that's shtiklach Torah. That's what I meant when I said it's not a thing mitzad their rabbanos. Meaning, avada, you could have a periodical of divrei Torah, of chidushei Torah, but that's not really negeh to their rabbanos. You know what I mean by that? Meaning in their kehillah, if they're a rav of a kehillah and they never do that, it's not necessarily gonna be mashpia one way or the other on how the kehillah views them or their interaction with the kehillah, etc. Now, here's another nekuda.
Even in the shtiklach Torah, it's very important how you present it, you organize it.
100%. I don't disagree at all. But I'm just focusing now mitzad the maimid and the job of rabbanos. But in achinami, if a person is writing a shtickle Torah, he should pay as at least as much attention to it as he does when he's writing an article, for sure.
You're saying it's part of his leading.
That's what I mean, exactly. Writing the chidushei Torah, if a person is a rav in Ichveis, Kiryat Sefer, or in Ramot, or whatever, even if he never writes a shtickle Torah in one of these periodicals, l'chayre, it's not megareya from his rabbanos. It wouldn't seem to detract from his status and his efficacy and his standing and influence as a Rav. L'chayra. Again, I'm not being mizazel in what that is. I'm just speaking mitzad rabbanos right now, or leadership, or other leadership-oriented tafkidin. Okay, so now here's a nekuda.
If he writes or gives a shir anywhere in his community. I'd say he gives twice a week. Monday and Thursdays, he comes to shul and you get a shir, whatever it is, instead of writing or publishing something.
Again, what's the nakuda that you're trying to shtalavek? That therefore he doesn't need to write?
Yeah.
So so in achinami, I mean, were you here for the first? I just didn't notice. There were a few. Okay, so that was what we went over. We went over all the advantages that you get from the written word that you don't necessarily get from the spoken word. So you can, I don't know if this will be posted at some point. Some people here are recording it. Okay, so there's an akud over here which I'd like to mention, which again, I don't know how many of you are aspiring to really go for a serious position in Rabbanus or not, but if you are, then another ha'ara l'chayra is that name recognition is not a bad thing. And if you write, and especially if you already start writing now, so then you could start to build name recognition for yourself. Now, there's two aspects to this. One aspect is that if you write things, just give me a second to speak out the thought, and then I'll take questions. Actually, maybe it's a better idea if I'll just speak out this thought, then I'll take the question. So, if you write articles, or emails, or whatever it is, I'm just going to use the word articles to include all of them, okay? If you write articles on a regular or semi-regular basis, and you start to get a following of people that are reading them and view them as being valuable, then that means that there's already a tzibur of people out there that recognize you as bringing value to the table. Which means that if one day you are a candidate for a rabbanus, and they might, want to do some type of, background check or, a Google search to see who are you, what have you done, etc. So then they may find, hey, this is a guy that's already gotten a name for himself, that he brings value to the table. So that can possibly give you a competitive edge, mitzad shtadlus. There's another nekuda, again, I'm only speaking mitzad shtadlus. Bottom line, everything is siyata d'shmaya, but we're talking about mitzad shtadlus. There's also something called brand name recognition. And this is like a yesod in marketing, that a huge chelik of marketing is just getting people to know your name. Just getting people to know who you are. And there's like a huge amount of research behind this, it seems to me, and I seem to remember seeing this somewhere, that the aside is that our brains are hardwired to go with the familiar. We go with what's familiar to us. We feel more comfortable. We feel more trusting of things that are familiar. So if you've been writing, I don't know, let's say you start writing for matzav.com, you've got this rabbi, what's his name from the Five Towns? Rabbi Yair Hoffman. If you'd be walking down the street and someone says, oh, so Rabbi Hoffman, wait, you're Rabbi Yair Hoffman? So I know you. You don't know me, but you read his articles all the time. So if you get name recognition, again, if all of a sudden one day you're a candidate and they're like, oh, wait a minute. What's your name? Yehuda, what's your last name? Yehuda Eisen. Oh, you're the guy that's been writing, you write these articles in Matzav. So there's name recognition over there. There's a certain, it's a certain mila that you have. If you can, let me just finish this half of the thought. And if you can, again, I don't know how many of you, this is really on your radar screen, but if it is, if you see this in your future, I would suggest start now. Now, for a few years, I was writing, we'll get to that a little bit more. For a few years, I was writing for Hamodia. At a certain point, I got a juke in my head, I wanted to write for Hamodia. How did I do it? I didn't email them and say, hey guys, I want a column. I started writing letters to the editor. And I made a point that the letters to the editor should be written in a way that it could be a standalone article. And lo and behold, after a certain number of weeks of doing that, they wrote to me, we'd like to use this as an op-ed piece. Do you mind? And I said, well, let me think about it. All right, fine, I'll let you do that. Now, at a certain point, I stopped. I got annoyed at them for a few reasons. There were a few things that happened that I got annoyed about. So, whatever, obviously, I didn't want it that badly. I would have liked to keep it up, but whatever. They're all good. Baruch Hashem, everybody's wonderful. They all mean very well. But whatever, there were a few things that I got a little bit annoyed about, so I stopped. No, it wasn't because they edited what I wrote. That I had no problem with. That I had no problem with whatsoever. No, whatever. It doesn't matter. But, we don't have to go into the kishkas of that. That's fine. So you could do this. You could write letters to the editor. Whether it's Ami or Mishpacha or Hamodia. I don't even know how. There's tons of them. Matzav.com, Yeshiva World News. I don't know if that's going to work so well. I don't know what's going on over there. That seems to be a very tightly closed system over there. What? I don't know all the. I'll tell you the truth. I'm not holding in all the nice, but. If you really are thinking about this, it's a serious thing on your radar screen, I would strongly suggest start now. Start. Jump right in. Now, another thing you could do is you can make your own blog or website. I will add a very important qualification to that statement. If you are someone that has no connection to the internet, I would not suggest connecting to the internet for this. Be'emet, if someone has the schus, that he's b'chalal, not connected to the internet, which means that he's more connected to his own life, then don't start because of this. But if you are, and it's a thing that you already use, you could start your own blog, you could start your own website, and of course emails. And when you write, there's actually a Yid who's significantly older than me. He's my Chavrusa Shver. He's a grandfather, can I know many times over. He's a great grandfather yet. And he's he was an accountant for many years. He's one of these Yidden that knows everything about everything. So he writes these articles, and he was publishing them in Ohr Hamerkaz, which is MDY's, the Stefanski-based Medrash's unofficial weekly newsletter. And then I said to him, how much of a reach are you getting? And I suggested that he should put out, just like print out his piece and put it around MDY. And then I also told him, I said, make sure you write your name. And I said this obviously in a much more respectful way than I'm saying it now. I'm speaking to, relatively elderly Yid. I said, write your name and then write on the bottom. Anybody who wants to get these articles directly to their inbox, email me, subscribe, and it starts to work. So you do that, every article you write. If you would like to receive these articles directly to your inbox, email me at whatever your email address is, write subscribe in the subject line, and you'll start to gain a following b'siyata d'ishmaya. You'll start to have a built-in audience, which, if you think about it, we spoke about expanding your reach. Who said that before? That you can expand you can reach a much broader audience. And when you have a built-in audience, if you ever decide to publish a sefer, if you ever have that shigaon that attacks you, like it attacked me a few times, and I say it's a shigaon because it's not the book market is not an author's market unless you're someone like Nachman Seltzer, and you're selling a lot of books because they're very entertaining and et cetera, et cetera. But if you have a built-in audience, so for example, I spoke to the people at, I think it was at Art Scroll, and what is that series of books of Living Emunah? I think it's Living Emunah. So I asked the people at Art Scroll, how did he do? He did unbelievable. And I asked them, I said, well, how do you think that happened? Because nowadays, unfortunately, that type of title and that type of subject wouldn't seem to go as much as short stories, etc. And I was told he had a built-in audience. He had been sending out emails for many years, and he had a very... Sorry?
I've been listening to his audio show for 10 years.
Okay, so he had a built-in audience for many years. So Mamela, when he had a book, he already had his own market, his own niche market built in. Okay.
And short stories also.
Oh, he also has short stories in there.
Also like
Okay, so very good. All right, was there a question? You had a question on what we were saying?
Name recognition, I wasn't sure what you meant, but I understand it.
Okay.
That you recognize someone else's name, but they recognize you.
Meaning they know who you are. They know who you are. Stamozai in and of itself, and that gives you a certain edge. And also if they know that you bring value.
And I just want to make a comment, and I can't believe what dara we're living in if they're looking into a rabbi and they Google him to know if he's a good rabbi for them.
Well, I don't think that that's the only thing they would do. But for example, I can tell you that there was at least one Yid who's from the Fried Gedor, like he's in that age bracket that I was just mentioning before, and when he wanted to know about me, one of the things that he did was he Googled me. He wanted to see, it's called your what do they call it? The internet footprint? Your online presence, internet footprint, meaning your digital footprint. If you do stuff online, it's there. And people can know about you. So if you don't do anything online, people won't know anything about you, mitzad that. But if you do, so I was very happy to be able to hear from him, that he said to me, Ashrecha, I saw your articles on H.com, I saw your articles on Matzav.com, I saw your articles on Hamodia.com, I saw different things that books that you've written that are advertised on Feldheim.com or ArtScroll, etc. So, I can't imagine that there would be a kahila that would hire a Rav only on the basis of what they find online about him. I mean, unless they found that he's a criminal and then they would just say no. But, to hire him, but it certainly would be one step. If this guy does stuff online, let's put it this way, if I was looking to hire someone, I would even ask someone who's on Facebook, check to see if he's on Facebook. Check to see if he has a Facebook account, which is one of those social media things. Because if he does, you can see what he posts. And that tells you a lot about a person nowadays. Who was it? There was a Chashav Rav, actually, who said this. Maybe it was Rav Yosef Wiener. I'm not sure. But I heard once in the shir, there's a Chashav Rav who said you can tell. Oh, no, it was Rabbi Wallerstein, I think. Zatzal. I think he was the one who said that you can tell what a person is really about by what he posts on his Facebook page, assuming that he has that. Because for whatever reason, people feel like they can just post anything. So if someone opens up, whatever your page is, not a Facebook page, you have an internet website, right? And they see what you post. And you post Divrei Torah, and you give links to other people's Divrei Torah. Okay, so they see that you're a Torah Mensch. Meaning, at least mitzvah that. Okay.
At least on the internet,
Now let's ask a question. And I know this sounds superfluous, but I'll explain what I mean. Why do we write articles? Or why do we write at all? Now it sounds like I'm asking the same question that we started off with, but I'm not. And I'll explain that by asking another question. Why did the contractor who built this building build this building? Anybody want to
He was paid
offer an answer? He was paid.
to fill a need.
Who said this?
Me.
To fill a need. To fill what need?
He wanted to create a need or fill a need.
To fill what need?
Housing the school.
Housing a school. So what are the difference between, again?
Bumi.
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 Bumi. Avrumi. That your name is Avram. Reb Avram. So you don't mind if I call you Reb Avram?
Everyone.
Okay. So Reb Avram said he got paid. Why did he build the building? Because he's making money. And Rabbi Yehuda said, why did he build the building? To be able to house a school. What's the difference between those two answers? Are they arguing with each other? Let's ask that. Are those two answers arguing with each other?
There are two different aspects. One is from his aspect, one is from what's needed for the general need.
But we're asking the same guy, why did you build this building? I'm going to ask the contractor, why did you build this building? Can he possibly have both of those answers?
Yeah.
Yes, he can. One answer is addressing the why of motivation. Why did you do this? What motivated? By the way, there's a Bir Halacha, Derech Agav, that he says that when it comes to something which is be'etzem a mitzvah, like Siva Stam, so then the hanacha pshuta is that he's having kavanas mitzvah, even if his whole motivation is money, is making money. Masha'en kein, something which is not be'etzem a mitzvah, like a soicher stam, you're buying and selling, so then if he doesn't lahedya have kavana l'shem mitzvah, then he doesn't have a din of an oisik b'mitzvah. So that's talking about motivation. You were addressing, Rabbi Avram was addressing motivation. What motivated the kablan, the contractor, to build this building? He wanted to make money. Now, if you ask the kablan, for what purpose are you building this building? And that's what you mean by why. Well, that's a very different question. That's a very different answer. I'm building this building for the purpose of housing a school. Or you could be building a different building, which is for the purpose of housing the Iriyah. Or housing, a train station, etc., etc. And obviously that's going to have a very big difference between the how, the what, the when, the where, in terms of what purpose are you doing it for. So now I'm asking that question. Why do we write articles? For what purpose do we write an article? We spoke about how it enhances your toolbox. But tachlis, for what purpose? Let's define very clearly. What is the purpose that you're trying to achieve when you write an article or anything for that matter? Anybody? Ideas?
Teach.
To teach. So you know something that other people don't know, and you want to teach it to them. You want to convey information that they don't know. Very good. Anything else?
You have an opinion and you want to share it.
But for what purpose?
Influence.
To influence. Okay, in what way? You influence them to what?
To follow your opinion.
To follow your opinion. So let's just be menasech that slight. What's your name, by the way, again?
Shalom.
Shalom. So let's be menasech that slightly differently. You want to convince people of a certain belief. You have a certain belief, and you're trying to convince people of that belief. You want them to ascribe to that belief. Anything else?
Advertise. Communicated content.
Communicated content, you're trying to sell something. Okay, I don't think that would fit so much within this.
Get people to go to join a share program or.
Okay, good, very good. I didn't even think about that. Very good, Rabbi Yehuda Shkoyach. I could see that you're a bonus material.
All rabbanim are signing out things for that good to write.
Very good, excellent. So you want to get people to take action. You want to get people to take action. You're trying to, so you could get them to take action by buying something, by signing up for something, by attending something. So you're trying to motivate people to undertake a certain action. So before we said, up until now we said you're trying to teach people, you're trying to convey information that they don't know. You're trying to give them the benefit of knowledge that they don't yet have. That's one possible purpose for which you're writing something. Another possible purpose is that you're trying to influence them, convince them to believe something. You're trying to get them to do something, to motivate them to action. Anything else? Rabbi Avram, what did you just say? Entertain. You might be writing to entertain. Now, I know that this is not going to be the official party line of all the writers of short stories. But tachlis, from as far as I can tell, the reason why that tchum is so successful is because tachlis, what it does is that it entertains. People sit down on their couch, they open up a short stories book, and they enjoy reading the stories, whether or not they're going to get any practical benefit from it or not. It's entertainment. Anything else? Anything else?
I just want to say, I think for motivating speech is much better than that.
Again, for
Motivating.
Motivating.
could be.
It's much better because you can, with your gestures, you can express yourself more.
That definitely could be. But again, as we said before, but as we said before, you can reach a broader audience. You can reach more people. There's a certain manner of expression, etc., etc. Speaking is definitely going to have milas over writing. Writing is going to have milas over speaking. So I would like to add, which is kind of overlaps with what we said down, is to inspire. Now, inspiration doesn't necessarily mean I'm trying to motivate someone to take a certain action. I'm not even necessarily trying to convince them of a certain belief. I'm really trying to get them to feel a certain way. I want to inspire. Now, why do I want to inspire? There's definitely the next step that you could explain. Why do I want to inspire? But the immediate goal is that someone should read what I wrote and walk away feeling inspired. So we've got conveying information, educating, teaching. We've got inspiring. We've got motivating to action, convincing, influencing someone to believe a certain way, and entertaining. So now the question, yeah.
There are more about. I don't know if this is relevant. Sometimes I write sometimes, but I'm doing it just to clarify things to myself, or just to get things out of myself.
I'm sorry. I should have been more clear what I meant. Why do we publish an article? You're right. And that's a very, very important point that you're making. Rabbi Avram just said that sometimes I might write something just to clarify it for myself. Who was the one who said the following zog? My pen is my chavrusa. Anybody know? My pen is my chavrusa? No, it was not Mark Twain. I saw it about Rav Mordechai Gifter. That Rav Mordechai Gifter had a tkufa where he was a Rav somewhere in the middle of nowhere. He had no chavrusas. And he said, was that where it was? Was that where it was? Okay. So he said that during that tkufa, when I read, it says in the book, I read it about him, that during that tkufa, his chavrusa was his pen. So very good. So you're right. What I meant was, why do we publicize what we've written? For what purpose do we publicize?
Element even there. Even when you publish something, it's just to make public. It gets it out. What you.
Okay. A person might be publicizing an article purely out of a desire for self-expression, self-actualization. That is definitely possible. But we'll talk about whether that is a good idea or not. And that's coming now. How do you accomplish these goals? Okay, just give me 1 second. How do you accomplish these goals? By the way, does anybody have the time? Okay, thank you. So, I'm sorry?
No, I don't know. It might fit more into the first way, but it's a way of expressing yourself anonymously.
Expressing yourself anonymously. But again, we're asking a very specific question. For what specific particular purpose? What goal, immediate goal, are you trying to achieve with this written piece? Okay, you're expressing yourself anonymously. Why? For what? And I know why you're expressing yourself anonymously, because you don't want people to know that it was you that wrote it. But what are you trying to achieve?
Why'd you write in the first place?
Okay.
Don't write it. Nobody wrote it.
How do we accomplish these goals? Okay, we want to educate, we want to inspire, we're trying to motivate, we are trying to convince of beliefs, we are trying to entertain possibly. How do we achieve these goals?
We practice writing.
And then
Publish, of course.
once you've written
Well,
once you've written
article. We're not
right,
done.
once you've written an article that can achieve those goals. But how do you do that? So the answer is very simple.
Writing tools.
I know this is going to sound ridiculously obvious, but sometimes you have to speak out what's obvious in order to chop that it's not so obvious. You have to have content and delivery that does that. If you want to, let's just start with goal number 1. You want to convey knowledge that the reader does not yet have. Well, then your content has to be content of knowledge that the reader does not yet have. I know that sounds redundant. It sounds superfluous. It sounds like, duh, like, Berman, what are you doing up there? But how many times does it happen that someone stands up to give a Dvar Torah, or to give a speech, or writes an article, that you're thinking to yourself, why on earth did you just take of my time to make me listen to you saying that or reading that? Most people know that already. A lot of people, for example, when we talked before about writing out of a goal, out of both a motivation and a goal of just self-expression and self-actualization, sometimes you can wind up writing something or saying something for that matter, but we're going to focus on writing. You can wind up writing something which really should have been a sikkum for yourself. It should have been nothing more than a summary that you're writing for your own benefit, and instead you published it. Now, why did you publish it? Why are you motivated to publish it? Because Avad, it makes you feel good if people read your article and they say, wow, it's a great article and this. But the likelihood is that if the reader already knows what you're conveying, he's not going to that goal will not be achieved. You will not achieve the goal of conveying knowledge, new knowledge to the reader if it's knowledge that he already knows.
In other words, this what you want to convey is not something that needs to be conveyed.
Well, again, let's just speak it out the way it is. If the goal is to convey new knowledge to the reader, and this is not new knowledge for him, then you're not achieving that goal. If you want to achieve that goal, then the content that you're conveying has to constitute new knowledge for the reader. Or if it's inspiring, then the content has to be inspiring. If the content is not inspiring, it will not achieve the goal to inspire. If the goal is to motivate to action, if the content is not of the sort that it motivates to action, it will not achieve that goal. And obviously, what?
Doesn't that depend on the audience?
Definitely, 100%. That's one of the things that we're going to get to. Know your target audience. Absolutely. For example, I gave a shiur here in Ohr Somayach on this past Thursday at noon, and for them, just about anything I would tell them. They didn't know King David. There was one guy there that he had a shtickle yeshivish background. He knew about King David. The rest of the guys, they never even heard about King David. David HaMelech. So there's almost nothing that I could say in Torah that's not new knowledge to them. Absolutely. 100%. Again, I'm sorry. I got a Reb Shalom. That is a critical point, which I was planning to get to later, but we can get to it now. You must know your target audience. You have to know, is this new knowledge for my target audience or not? I'll get back to it again later. Now, the same thing applies to the delivery. You could potentially have the best content in the world, but if you deliver it in a way that is very boring and sounds like a monotone, etc., 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 you could have the most motivating content. You could have the most inspiring content. You could even have entertaining content. We've all heard jokes that fall flat, right? And you could have one guy says over the joke, it's the same joke, and the whole place is rip-roaring with laughter. And someone else says it, and everybody's just staring at him blankly. Because you know what? Delivery makes a huge difference also. It's not just the content, it's the delivery. So, bein mitzad the content, bein mitzad the delivery, your content and your delivery has to be of a nature that it will achieve that goal.
What do you mean by delivery?
Well, for example, if instead of speaking the way I'm speaking right now, I would start speaking like this, and
do that in writing.
Yes you can. Yes you can.
Then
yes you can.
At all. If you want to inspire.
Again, sorry?
If you are not delivering it in the right way, it's not going to be inspiring at all.
Right.
Which way?
He's saying that the content can't be separated from delivery. Meaning, if a joke's not delivered well, it's not a joke. It's words.
No, that's not true at all. That's not true at all.
It's not entertaining. It's not entertaining.
That's correct. It's not entertaining, but it is a joke. It's definitely a joke and a story as well. Some people are magnificent storytellers. You could hear the same story from two people, the exact same content, and one of them, you're sitting on the edge of your seat with bated breath, just waiting to hear the next line, and the same thing with writers. Absolutely 100%, they're writers. By this point in my life, when I look back at some of the short story books that were written 10, 15 years ago, I almost can't read them anymore. Because the style of the short story writers in the Frum Olam has developed and evolved so much that it's reading those stories from 10, 15, 20 years ago is so dry that it's almost, at least for me, I wouldn't say impossible, but it can be very difficult. So you could have a joke, you could have a story, you could have content that Mitzad, the content is inspiring. It could be new knowledge. But if it's given in a way where the reader either does not chap that it's new knowledge, or for some reason it's given in a way where it just kind of flies over his head like a 747, well then the reader will not gain new knowledge. So the content, if your goal is to convey new knowledge, has to be new knowledge. And the delivery has to be such that the reader will actually absorb that new knowledge.
I mean, the tools for the good delivery, it's when you write in a way that's inspiring to learn the new thing from it.
Well, again, not every single thing. Inspiring, when I speak about inspiring, I'm primarily focusing on an emotional state of being, where a person feels a state of being uplifted, a certain level of ecstasy, a certain level of excitement, happiness, etc. As opposed to, if I start, telling you over a chiddush din, and I know how to say it over, the way a person really knows how to say over a chiddush, it's like, this is azoi geschmack. It's like, wow, this knowledge is so cool. Knowledge is something that the human brain, Baruch Hashem, especially Yidden, it appreciates its value in and of itself. So you don't have to write it in an inspiring way, but you certainly have to write it in an engaging way. You certainly have to write it in an educational way. You certainly have to write it in a way that the reader is going to absorb that content. Okay, we're just about out of time. So the much more interactive part of this class will have to wait till next time, which is fine. Sorry, what was that?
It wasn't interactive too much.
Ooh, we want to know.
It wasn't.
You guys want to stay here till 10 o'clock?
We're here tonight.
So, but just as a very, very short akdama to the next class, is that, so how, basically what we're saying is, comes down to a bottom line. Tachlis, what we're saying is that if you want to achieve the goal of conveying knowledge, of inspiring, of motivating, of convincing, of entertaining, it's got to be a good article. It's got to be a good piece. If it's poor, bein mitzad the content, bein mitzad the delivery, it won't achieve the goal. So then the question is, and this is now going to start getting into the kishkas of the learning how to do it, is how do you tell the difference between a good article and a poor article? And we're going to do this, in Mirz Hashem, next time. I'm going to give out to the oilam. I've got 3 articles, sample articles over here. Okay, we're gonna read them. You guys are gonna read them, and then we're gonna discuss them. We're gonna perform surgery on them, b'siyata d'ishmaya, and we're gonna do this on 3 levels. We're gonna do it on 3 levels, b'siyata d'ishmaya. We're gonna do it what I like to call the macro analysis, which is basically analyzing it in a very general way. And I had to look this up because I had no idea what the word between macro and micro is. I learned a new word today, meso, M-E-S-O, meso analysis, which is that's where you start getting into the specifics, but you're not really getting into the fine details. And then we're going to get into the micro analysis, where you get into the nitty gritty of the way it's written. And I think a mashal for this is, we're here in Eretz Yisrael, and most of the world uses the metric system. So it's like, how are you measuring something? Are you measuring it by meters? Are you measuring it by centimeters? Are you measuring it by millimeters? So in Mirz Hashem, next time we're going to take these articles and we're going to start to tease them apart and look at them in a general way, get a little bit more specific, and then really get into the details. Shkoyach for listening.